All right, today we are taking some incredibly controversial primary source material, stripping away all that outside noise and objectively dissecting exactly what is going on inside. Our source for this explainer? An undercover report from the YouTube channel PolitiBrawl Streetcast. The creator of this footage claims to have successfully infiltrated a closed-door meeting of the Democratic Socialists of America, or the DSA, right in the heart of New York City. Now, we all know political rhetoric can get absolutely scorching these days. There are accusations constantly flying back and forth in the media about who's a radical, who's a communist, and what those labels even mean anymore. Well, our goal today is absolutely not to take a side. Instead, we're going to impartially map out the claims, the unedited audio, the visual evidence, and the ideological arguments presented in this undercover footage. We're laying the whole shebang out there so you can see exactly where these ideological battle lines are being drawn.
So, here's our roadmap. First, we'll look at the undercover infiltration itself. Second, we'll go inside the secret meeting. Third, a coming class war. Fourth, communist symbols on display. And finally, defining the ideological divide.
Okay, let's jump right into Section 1, the undercover infiltration. So this event took place at a venue called the People's Forum in Manhattan, and it featured recent DSA primary winners. Now, according to the independent journalists who filmed this footage, the People's Forum isn't just a random event space. They claim it's a radical left-wing organization that actually fuels the rise of the DSA in American politics. The creator goes a step further, alleging that this specific venue is funded by a China-based Marxist billionaire named Neville Roy Singham. The claim here is that he has spent hundreds of millions of dollars to destabilize America through left-wing activism. Whether you agree with that or not, that is the specific framing the journalist brings to the table as they walk up to the building. The methodology here was classic undercover journalism. Step 1, they approach the Manhattan headquarters. Step 2, they activate what the creator calls spy pens, which are essentially just everyday pens designed to covertly record both audio and video. And step 3, which is crucial, was bypassing a very strict rule. The journalist notes that upon checking in, the attendees were explicitly told right up front, absolutely no recording allowed during this meeting. But with their hidden cameras already rolling, the journalist walked right into a room of roughly 100 people, quietly grabbed a seat, and started documenting.
Moving on to Section 2, inside the secret meeting.
Once inside, you can immediately sense this atmosphere of high alert on the audio. It's really palpable. The speakers jump right into addressing recent infiltrations. One speaker points out that conservative media, specifically calling out Fox News, continues to showcase and, in their words, smear them. They express some very serious anxiety about their organizers being targeted, stating that during a previously infiltrated meeting, some of their members were doxxed. Now, the video creator pushes back hard on this specific claim in their narration. The journalist completely admits to sneaking into a previous Brooklyn event to expose an anti-ICE hotline, but firmly denies doxing anyone. They define doxing as releasing home addresses or personal info that leads to physical attacks, and they insist they were just reporting on who was organizing the event, which they consider standard journalism. But regardless of that back and forth, the audio clearly captures a deep sense of vulnerability in that room and a very strict stance on mitigating risks for their people.
And that atmosphere of vulnerability extends directly into how they organize. On the tape, a speaker who identifies herself as a formerly undocumented immigrant who gained citizenship back in 2016 is talking about building political power in Queens. She gives a shout-out to their compañeros, which is a Spanish term that translates to comrades, working in the movement, emphasizing that you, quote, don't need papers to have power. She acknowledges how vulnerable the community is, but insists they hold the keys to their own liberation. Now, the video creator interprets this terminology highly critically. The journalist identifies that word as a literal code word used by the DSA for undocumented immigrants, arguing that the organization is actively bragging about using undocumented operatives to seize political power. This is a fascinating look at how specific language can become a heavily contested tactical tool in polarized politics. You have two totally different sides interpreting the exact same words in entirely different ways.
That brings us to Section 3, a coming class war.
Listening to the tape, you hear this just utter disdain for the mainstream Democratic establishment. One speaker literally describes the establishment's attitude as wanting to appear like a family you don't cross, claiming their ultimate goal is just to control organizers and throw them crumbs to keep you happy. The establishment, they argue, is downright terrified of an empowered working class. In total contrast to that, the speakers articulate the DSA's vision. They want to build a beautiful, welcoming movement for a multiracial working class that actually gives people agency over their own lives. The journalist finds this dynamic super interesting. They note the massive irony here that these organizers are heavily critiquing the Democratic Party while simultaneously utilizing its established institutions and electoral resources to oust incumbents.
But the rhetoric on the tape goes way further than your standard political primary rivalry. Listen to this quote captured in the room. "We need to band together and we need to get ready for this war that's coming up. No war but class war." The speakers attribute the sudden backlash they're facing from the establishment to the simple fact that the socialist movement is actually winning. They align themselves heavily with the labor movement, praising the UAW for standing in international solidarity, and they position their movement explicitly against the war machine and corporate billionaires. They make it very clear. They don't view themselves as just some millennial book club. They see themselves as a multi-generational movement continuing a long legacy of struggle against the U.S. empire.
Let's look at Section 4, Communist Symbols on Display.
Because it wasn't just about what was being said, it was about what was physically in the room. On the walls and shelves of the People's Forum, the journalists documented what they describe as straight-up communist propaganda. The visual evidence they captured includes references to the Black Panther Party, a painting of Assata Shakur, who the creator points out was an open communist who fled to Cuba after a murder conviction, and countless depictions of Soviet founder Vladimir Lenin. The journalist even noted an attendee openly wearing a red Bolshevik star who admitted to being a communist. Add to that displays of literature by Karl Marx and Communist Party leader Claudia Jones, along with Cuban and Venezuelan flags. For the creator of this video, this physical evidence is the smoking gun. They argue that while DSA candidates frequently go on mainstream TV to insist they are democratic socialists, and definitely not communists, their collaboration with a venue absolutely drenched in the specific iconography proves otherwise.
And finally, Section 5, Defining the Ideological Divide.
To explain why these political labels actually matter, the journalist outlines Karl Marx's economic theory of historical progression. According to the video creator's summary of the theory, human economic models pass through very distinct phases. It starts with feudalism, then shifts into capitalism, transitions into socialism as a temporary stepping stone, before finally arriving at the ultimate goal, communism.
But here is where the journalist makes their ultimate counter-argument, basically juxtaposing Marx's theory with what they view as historical reality. You see, Marx's utopian vision of that final stage, communism, was an equal world. No social classes, no private property, and crucially, no government, because the state would essentially just fade away as it was no longer necessary. However, the video creator argues that the historical reality of every single communist country in the 20th century is the exact opposite of that. They argue that instead of doing away with elitism, these movements just shift power away from entrepreneurs and capitalists and hand it directly over to massive authoritarian governments. In the creator's view, power simply becomes centralized among a new elite class of government bureaucrats who meticulously plan the economy and ultimately take advantage of working-class people, rather than liberating them.
So we have seen a pretty stark contrast in this explainer today. On one side, you have grassroots organizers speaking incredibly passionately behind closed doors. They're talking about protecting their vulnerable members, fighting corporate billionaires, and empowering a multiracial working class through what they call a class war. On the exact opposite side, you have an independent journalist pointing directly to the room's Marxist literature and Lenin portraits, arguing that this entire movement is just a Trojan horse for authoritarian communism that historically centralizes state power. It really leaves us with a critical question to ponder as we watch our political landscape evolve. How will these hidden ideological battles and this intense fight over shifting political labels actually shape the future of American politics? Thanks for diving into this with us today. Keep analyzing the sources, keep asking the hard questions, and we will catch you next time.